Hey everybody, this is Jason Creel and this is the Lawn Care Life. Today I'm talking Zoysia Grass and Bermuda Grass. I'm going to compare the two, tell you what's good about one and good about the other, pros and cons, give you some tips, and help you understand what is the best grass for your particular situation. I'm also just going to show you Centipede and St. Augustine because I just happen to have all four in my yard. Not primarily, okay, but I've got a little bit to show you. So let's get started with that right now. Okay, so let's start with the Zoysia Grass. I'm just going to show it to you. Now, I apologize for the shadows. You can see the situation here. I got these large crepe myrtle trees, and I'll get down here where the shadows are not as obvious. And this was planted last year, and this is Zoysia. Now, let me take you over here, and we'll look at some Bermuda grass so I can see. But you can see here where I put the Zoysia here, primarily because of those trees. Now if you come over here, you got Bermuda, and that's my primary grass type, and I'm going to go into details on why I went with Bermuda for most of my grass. And doesn't mean you should, but you know, it's the situation. Now my house is currently under construction. We added on to it, so but this yard, this is where the new septic tank went in. You can see how the Bermuda grass is starting to recover. We've had a lot of rain and I have a lot of fertilizer, so that's Bermuda. But you see over here what the Bermuda is supposed to look like, except for where that water line was dug. But anyway, this is Bermuda, so we're going to talk about that. Now let me show you a little bit of Centipede, and then we will lastly take a look at the little bit of St. Augustine I have. Now, this is like actually my property. It's out here by the road, and it just so happens to have some Centipede grass on it. Now, it is technically mine, but I don't really manicure it like a lawn. But this is our Centipede grass. Hopefully I won't get hit by a car. If I do, the video will be over. All right, there's the Bermuda from a distance. Again, I think by late summer it's gonna be looking good. This is primarily Bermuda. I do have lots of trees, so shadows is just part of life around here. And I'm walking over here to show you the St. Augustine. Now, I'm filming this in May. Our grass is we're actually down in the 40s last night. So our grass has got decent color, but not quite to the level that it will be hopefully in a month or so when it really starts growing, and I think all these bare spots will fill in. This yard's a total redo. We scraped the whole thing down and plugged it, and over here underneath this big oak tree I put threw out some St. Augustine, so you can see how wide it is, and I cut it real tall. So I'm wanting the St. Augustine to fill in here. Now for the topic of the video, we're talking Bermuda and Zoysia lawns in this situation. So if you look at my yard, the Zoysia grass that I have is the most beautiful grass. But I hear people oftentimes, and they complain about Zoysia, and they say, oh, Zoysia has this problem or that problem, or it doesn't stay green long enough. But in my situation, my Zoysia is the best grass I've got. And again, this was planted last year. Now Bermuda would have no chance of growing here. It would be very thin, and some types of Zoysia are more shade tolerant than others. This Zoysia is supposedly one of the most shade tolerant varieties, needing only 3 or 4 hours of sunlight. Okay, so what do you need to know about Bermuda and Zoysia? Well, the Zoysia grass can look great, but here's some of the downsides to Zoysia. One, it's more expensive. Okay, the sod farms just charge more for it. It's typically slower to grow, so they're not as able to grow it in as fast, supply and demand kind of thing. They can't keep the supply up because it just doesn't grow as fast, so they charge more. Typically in our area, a pallet of Zoysia may be anywhere from $225 to $275 at a sod farm. You might find it a little cheaper. I've seen it as low as $150, but Bermuda, you can get it around $100 to $110 a pallet at the sod farms. Zoysia is also very slow to spread. It doesn't mean it grows slowly. It doesn't, it grows about like Bermuda, probably a little bit slower, but it doesn't spread horizontally nearly as fast. So I'm going to talk about in a minute what I've done in my front yard when plugging it and watching the Bermuda spread. And you saw where the septic system was put in on this video, and that Bermuda will probably be filled in a couple of months. Where if that was Zoysia, we may be looking at a couple of years for it to fill in. It just spreads much slower. So you need to most likely sod it solid. You can't go with the old plugging method. I mean, you can, you just got to be extremely patient because it's going to take a while. Also, Zoysia, I think in my experience, just seems more prone to get fungus. Okay, so you may want to incorporate fungicide in your lawn care program in the fall before the cool weather hits. Put out some kind of broad spectrum fungicide and get it watered in before we get those cool nights in my area around September, October. We talked about Zoysia not growing very fast. Well, that also becomes a factor if it was to get damaged for some reason. So it's not as drought tolerant as Bermuda. And if you were to get something like winter damage, or you know, maybe the grubs ate the roots, you go into winter with a weak root system, you get some winter damage, it's not going to bounce back nearly as quickly as Bermuda. So you may want to incorporate a grub control in your Zoysia program so that you can hopefully prevent that winter damage. It doesn't mean that, you know, if you get a hard freeze, you still may end up with winter damage on Bermuda or Zoysia, but the Bermuda is going to bounce back much quickly and even fill in a big bare spot way faster than Zoysia would. With that being said, Zoysia to me is beautiful, but I see people that, and they try to grow it a little further north, and it doesn't, they're not getting enough green out of their Zoysia. You know, I've seen somebody leave comments before and they say, oh, my Zoysia is only green for like a couple of months out of the year, you know, and it just stays brown. Well, you know, you saw mine here in May and it's been looking green for a couple of months now. So I probably get 7 to 8 months of beautiful Zoysia. But yeah, it's not as drought tolerant, so you want to make sure you can keep it watered. And you know, it is much more shade tolerant, and I've demonstrated that with my Zoysia, and that's primarily, you know, where I see people use it a lot of times. Even if they've got a Bermuda lawn, they may put some Zoysia along a fence or under a tree or something. Now, when it says shade tolerant, it doesn't mean it necessarily likes shade, but it definitely tolerates shade. But I have seen in this, sometimes it seems like if it's in partial shade, it can help it if it was to get super hot and dry and you're not watering regularly, because it's not taking the full effect of the sun all day. It can help it. So I think in my situation, my grass there, we've had plenty of rain lately, but it's under those trees. It's kind of giving it some filtered shade, so it probably could make it on a little bit less water because it's not in direct sunlight all day. Now, when it comes to Bermuda grass, like I was saying, this whole property was scraped down, and last year it was looking really good before we started doing a lot of construction and stuff like that. That construction is bad for your yard, I found out. But anyway, we'll grow it back. But you know, it filled in, and what we basically did, you see my footprints, it's early in the morning, still got dew on the grass, but you can see the Bermuda, what's great about it is it's just about near indestructible. I mean, even when you're trying to kill it, it's hard to kill. Now, you know, you can kill it, so I'm not saying just go do crazy things to your Bermuda lawn. But in this situation, we plugged it, because I've got several acres here, and just plugged it to watch it fill in over time, and it spread extremely quickly. Now you got to get it, you know, get it rooted, whether you're doing sod plugs is what we did, or even if you seed it, you need to wait till it's hot, and then you got to figure out how to keep it watered. But I didn't want to go the seed route. I decided to plug it. And in the back of my property, I didn't even get it plugged. I just threw out whole pieces of sod on about 2 acres, just threw out the pieces and watching it spread. Now I've leveled it out. I can walk back there and show you what that's looking like. But anyway, you see it's just spread and filled in, and so if you want something that's going to spread extremely fast, Bermuda's the way to go. You know, you can get by super cheap. People's like, well, I can't afford to sod the whole thing. I'm like, well, if you got a little bit of time, you don't have to sod it. You can just put it out and watch it spread. Zoysia is something else worth mentioning, because I'm comparing it with Bermuda here, but the Zoysia is going to do a much better job of choking out weeds. I think it's just how thick it grows, where Bermuda, you know, not the best at keeping the weeds out of the lawn. Now, you know, the good thing about Bermuda, and Zoysia for that matter, they're very tolerant of a lot of different herbicides, where Centipede and Augustine are going to be a lot more sensitive to some, but Bermuda especially is very tolerant to herbicides, so you can spray it and keep it looking good. can see here where we're kind of cleaning out, and I apologize for the noise. We live close to the interstate, but you can see where, you know, this has all been scraped down, and you can see Bermuda just all throughout here, and it's just going to take time. So it's May right now. I'm putting the fertilizer of this and just going to watch it fill in. So if you've got a large area like this, you can just plug it with Bermuda and watch it spread. And I'm tracking this on YouTube, so I think by the end of the summer, I literally think this is going to be almost full grass. So it's going to be June, July, and August when it really starts growing, hopefully, if we get some rain this year. Now, speaking of rain, the Bermuda is extremely drought tolerant once it gets established. We had just a historic drought about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, and I didn't see a single Bermuda lawn die. But the zoysias, the centipedes, they really took a hit from that. You know, even if it starts turning brown, it's usually not going to die. Now, I'm not saying you can't kill it, obviously you can, but just in studies they've shown how drought tolerant it is. So even if it turns brown, it'll usually bounce back with some rain, where again the zoysia is not nearly as drought tolerant. Still drought tolerant. Once it starts turning brown, again, it's not going to recover as quickly. So you want to hopefully, if the earliest signs of drought stress, put the water to the zoysia. Where the Bermuda, you know, it's just about aesthetics at that point. It's not going to look good brown, but it's probably not going to kill it unless you have a extremely severe drought. As far as mowing the grass, I like to keep my Bermuda really short. Now, not everybody does that. I mow mine 1.5 inches, and I mow it frequently. If you're going to mow it less often, you're probably going to have to you know, start raising your blades when it really starts growing fast in the summer. Zoysia, I mow it a little higher. I mean, there's different varieties. Like I had a customer had like Palisade Zoysia, and I think you can actually real mow it at a 1/2 inch. Now, he didn't keep it that low. My Zorro Zoysia, I keep it at about 2.5 to 3 inches, so I keep it a little long. Again, I don't have irrigation, so I have to water it with a sprinkler if it gets dry. So I'm gonna keep it a little longer, because I don't want to get drought stressed. But the Bermuda, I just keep it mowed tight and low, and I want it to, to look like a tight fairway on a golf course, basically. The main thing I see people do that's a huge mistake, and I've already seen it with several people this year, as they take Bermuda sod. They'll have a place up against their house or against their fence or under a tree, and it's bare, and they've got a Bermuda yard. And what they do is they go buy some more Bermuda sod and they put it in that bare spot. And when I try to tell them after I see that, maybe if I should talk to them ahead of time if I'd have known, but you say, hey, listen, if the Bermuda was going to grow there, it would have already spread there on its own. So that, you put your sod there, it's nice and green, but it's going to continue to thin out and get worse and worse and worse. So oftentimes, if you'll get like an Emerald Zoysia, Zorro Zoysia, you can put it in those areas where the Bermuda's not getting enough sun, and it'll do well. And also, even on a slope, the Zoysia grows so thick, I find it seems like it holds better on a hill and can help with erosion issues once it gets established. Now, getting established is a little more tricky than getting Bermuda established. I actually planted this Zoysia, I'm gonna say a year ago, and I went to, not quite a year ago, but it had been probably 8 months, okay, and I went to move a piece of it, and I could still almost pull it up with my bare hands because it was still not rooted that great. Now, it was green and everything. I'm just saying it takes a while, where Bermuda's going to take root very quickly. But anyway, Zoysia is definitely the way to go if you have some partial shade situations. Don't try to force Bermuda in those situations. But Bermuda has its advantages, can look great too. You can put a lot of nitrogen to it, make it really dark green. You can mow it low and tight. You can reel mow it. And it spreads quickly if you're trying to cover a big area. Hope the video has been helpful. Appreciate you watching. If you've got questions, comments, leave them below. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd encourage you to subscribe to the channel. If you're in the lawn business, go over to lawncarelife.com. There's a lot of resources available for you. If you're thinking of starting a lawn business or already in the business, whether mowing or weed control and fertilization. Talk to you guys later. Bye.